Hello, welcome to another episode of Jim's Allotment Garden. I was hoping to do a bit of digging this weekend, but you'd need skis on, I think, to get on the ground today because we've had a load of rain over the evening, you know, sort of yesterday evening, and it's just like the sun basically. So there's no way I'm going to be able to do any digging today. But there's loads coming up. So welcome to another edition of Jim's Allotment Garden. Okay, so we'll start with a few questions that have come through over the last week or so. The first one's through Liz Capper, and she's asked about, I mentioned garlic when I was doing the Mother Nature about garlic. I was saying how that could be used to sort of control ants and slugs and all the rest of it, but it was the slugs particularly that Liz was interested in. You need to think of slugs like vampires. Garlic can be used to deter slugs, so if you spray garlic round, you know the garlic mixture that I explained. You can use that to spray that on the ground. That will deter slugs. So if slugs go onto that, where the garlic oil is, they'll almost certainly turn around and go. If you actually spray the garlic onto the slug, it will kill it. So you know, sort of just like vampires, if you've got garlic, they'll stay away from you. Or if you actually put garlic on them, it'll kill them. You know, they'll sort of, you know, within an hour or so, it'll actually kill the slug off. So it is a sort of pesticide, if you like, for slugs. However, you actually need to spray onto the slug for it to, you know, to really take effect. So if you've got loads of slugs about, then get your garlic spray out and spray them. But if you've got some sort of delicate plants that slugs like, you know, like salad or you know, sort of whatever, then obviously spray that round the plants and on the plants. And you know, the slugs will stay away from them because they don't like the garlic on there, you know, to sort of touch on the garlic oil. And don't forget, you know, as I said, don't spray anything that you're likely to harvest in, you know, within 4 weeks or so of spraying them, because you will get that sort of garlic taste potentially on wherever. So you know, certain plants that you know, as some of the comments said, you know, beans and stuff like that, you don't really mind if that tastes a bit of garlic. But obviously strawberries, you don't want to be spraying your garlics with garlic, because obviously you know, the strawberries will taste of garlic. So that was Liz Capper's question. The next one, which is along the same kind of lines, is from Nigel. Hi Nigel, from DIS Wolves. He's just up the road from me in Wolverhampton. He's asked about the garlic mixture. Now, as I explained, you know, crush your garlic into a jam jar, put some warm water in there, not hot water, warm water. Put a little teeny bit, just a few drops of washing up liquid. Give it a good shake, and then leave that for an hour or two. Then that'll be ready to use. You can either put that, obviously strain any bits of garlic out if you put it into a sprayer, because you don't want that to block your sprayer up. Most sprayers have like a little filter on the end, so you don't really need to worry too much. But you will find that the garlic will settle, so you can just pour off the top, or just pour it through a bit of muslin, or you know, some kind of a tea strainer or something like that will do it, just to get the bits of garlic out if you put it in a strainer. You can water that down probably about, if you're spraying it, probably I'd go for 2 to 1 or 3 to 1. So you could, with a something like that, which is probably just less than a litre, you could spray that. You know, you could put probably about a quarter of that, and then you know, sort of fill it up so it's kind of 4 to 1, and that would, you know, more than suffice. If you've got quite a lot of them about, then obviously you know, it kind of it depends on how much you're going to spray around. You know, if you're sort of like me and you spray loads on, then water it down a bit more. If you're going to go around quite sparingly, just put a squirt out so often, then make it a bit stronger. But I'd say anywhere between 2 to 1 to 4 to 1 ratio when you're spraying. And the question that Nigel had was, how long will it last? Right, if it's fresh, it's most certainly the best. So if you've got a slug problem, make some fresh up. That's obviously going to be the best way. And I would say that once in the jam jar, it will last probably about 2 weeks before it loses its effectiveness. But if I was you, what I do is, as and when you need it, just crush a bit of garlic up. Pretend it takes you a while just to make it up. You know, sort of shake it up, leave it for an hour or so, and then put it in your you know, your sprayer, and just use the lot there, and then you know, just sort of do it that way rather than it sitting around, because it will kind of ferment you know, ferment a bit if you're not careful. But I would suggest it lasts about 2 weeks. The next question's from Aaron. Thanks for all your comments, Aaron. I do appreciate it, from Aaron's allotment, and he's talked about the club root problem. And I was I'm sorry if I kind of confuse you a little bit with the comment. I did look at the video and I can see where you're coming from. I'm talking about, it was the Mother Nature part where I was talking about mycorrhizal fungi in the ground and how that kills certain pathogens. To my knowledge, Aaron, there is not a cure for clubroot, and if there was, I think you'd make a fortune out of it, to be honest with you. The only cure that I'm aware of for clubroot is not to grow any brassicas in the ground for about 4 or 5 years. That's the only surefire way of getting rid of it. You can control it. There are various ways of controlling it. You can put lime on the ground. That tends to you know, sort of knock it back. And brassicas like a bit of lime anyway. So where you're planting your brassicas, if you put garden lime on the ground, and I'll be coming on in a few episodes' time, probably in March, I'm going to be talking all about lime. It's not going to be part of the Mother Nature series of clips, but I'm going to be talking all about lime, because there's quite a few different types of lime that you can get, and they've all got different strengths and different uses. And I just want to, because I have known people in the past use the wrong type of lime for a certain job, and it's caused them problems. And obviously I don't want anybody to fall short of any of those issues. So I just wanted to explain some of the different types of lime for you in the future. But if you get garden lime, put that on the ground where you're going to put your brassicas. That will most certainly knock the you know, the sort of the club root back a bit. The other thing you can do is, obviously, where the actual plants are, put some potting compost there, which is not in contact with the roots, and that'll also help with club root issues. But unfortunately, mycorrhizal fungi does not, to my knowledge, stop clubroot. Clubroot is a pathogen in the soil, but unfortunately it's not one that mycorrhizal fungi will attack, or at least, you know, sort of cure, if you like. So that was Aaron's question. The last one's from Ken Fuller. Thank you for all your comments, Ken. I do appreciate your comments and your questions. And Ken's asking he's been looking back at some of the older videos where I did sort of back end of last year, where I was taking the potatoes out. I always save my own root potato, seed potatoes from the previous years. I have not bought any potatoes to put in the ground now for about 7 or 8 years. And to be honest with you, I think buying seed potatoes from the shop, unless you want to grow a variety you've not grown before, is nothing but a money spinner. You are wasting your money. All you need to do is save the potatoes from the year before, that are kind of either golf ball size or egg sized, you know, sort of potatoes. You don't want to use the sort of the really big ones. You just want to sort of save the golf ball ones, or slightly bigger, or even slightly smaller than that actually will do. And then what you need to do is overwinter them somewhere dark, dry, and dark and dry, and not you know, sort of, you know, frost free but not warm. And then come, we're nowhere near ready to start chitting potatoes yet, but we need to start chitting probably at sort of beginning or mid-March. That's really when you need to start chitting. You've got to think, you've got to work backwards. Frost will be at the end of May, potentially, so you don't want your potatoes out of the ground before then. So you want to be planting your potatoes probably sort of first or second week in May is when you actually want to plant your potatoes. So working back from there, you want to start chitting them so they're ready in you know, sort of March, sort of April time. So really you're chitting your potatoes for probably about 3 weeks, So really, it's the end of March that you really need to start thinking about chitting your potatoes. Don't chit them now, you're far too early. They're going to, they're going to start growing, they'll weaken by the time you get them in the garden. Or if you get them in the garden now, they're going to come up before the frosts come, and the frost will take the tops off your potatoes. So, we're not quite ready yet, but basically, saving your seed potatoes, coming back to Ken's question, what you want to do is save all of the potatoes, make sure you've got no diseased or damaged potatoes in there, because if you've got one damaged potato, if you've got blight or anything like that, throw it away. What you need to do is, and then separate the potatoes, ideally. In all honesty, all of mine are in a big tub at the moment, because I'm keeping them all together, dark in a cool place. But what you want to be doing is keeping your eye on them. If there's any that are damaged, bruised, got blight or rotten or anything like that, you want to take them straight out, because they'll send the rest of them bad. And then as soon as you come to chitting, I don't put any sulphur on them, I don't put any, I don't go through any of that type of malarkey. Make sure your potatoes are dry, so basically dig them out of the ground, make sure they're dry, lay them out on the ground. When they're perfectly dry, then put them in your tub, then leave them in the tub, all the ones that aren't damaged or anything, in the tub, and then obviously come sort of end of March, April time, then get them out, bring them into the warm, into the light, and then start chitting them from there. Put them in the ground, and away you go again. It's not complicated, and all of these garden centres that say, oh, you must buy seed potatoes and all the rest of it, it's a load of rubbish. Trust me, I've been doing this for 8 years. I have known people who have been growing potatoes for 60 years, and they have never bought seed potatoes. They always use the seeds from the year before, the smaller ones from the year before, to grow on for the next year, and they've been doing that for 60 years, and they've never had a problem. So when people say, oh, the disease accumulates in them and all this, it's rubbish. This is people trying to sell you seed potatoes. So save yourself a fortune, save your own seed potatoes, and then you don't need to buy them. Obviously, if you're going for a new variety that you haven't grown before, that somebody can't donate to you from another plot, then obviously you need to go out and buy them. But I wouldn't suggest that you put any in from the supermarket, so you buy potatoes from the supermarket and put them in. However, my father has done this in the past, and it's worked quite successfully. But I would suggest that you use your own properly sort of prepared seed potatoes from a shop to start with, and then from there on in, save your save your own seed potatoes. If you do have a particularly bad year of blight, throw them away and start again, because obviously if they've all got blight, you don't want to put that back into the ground. So but if your potatoes are disease free and you've dug them up and you haven't bruised them or anything like that, they're perfectly good for seed potatoes for the following year. So that was the questions that have come over in the last week or so. Thank you again to everybody for putting questions through. I do appreciate your time. There were a lot more questions, but those were the main ones I just wanted to quickly talk about. Okay, so at the heart of all allotmenteers and gardeners, it's not only about the plants and that, it's all about recycling materials and making things for your allotment, and that's where a lot of the excitement sort of comes in. So over the next few months, what I'm going to be talking about is different ideas of how to recycle things, because you can make almost everything that you could possibly want for an allotment or a garden, from sort of everyday items and that, and just with a little bit of imagination and sort of thinking about things, you can use almost anything that you sort of throw away or sort of whatever to make things that are useful. And obviously the way I think about it is, if you can double the life of something rather than throwing it away, if you can use it again for something else, you're halving the amount of pollution and sort of, well, not pollution, but sort of rubbish and stuff that we create. So we're ultimately helping the planet and everything else. So it's all kind of good, and you're saving money in your pocket. So from that perspective, it is really good. So today, what I want to talk about is 20, possibly more, ways of recycling bottles. Now, you'll have seen this. This is a very common thing to recycle in an allotment. But I just want to give you some ideas of what you can do with a bog standard bottle, or something like that, or a milk bottle, or anything like that you can make. So the first thing you can make with these bottles is you can make an entire greenhouse from these bottles. If you pierce the bottom of the bottle with a hole and put canes through, you can build the walls and the roof sections and and the door and everything out of these bottles. And if you go on Google Images, there are thousands of images where people have actually done this. They've built full-size greenhouses. It's not as good as a normal greenhouse, obviously, because there's going to be gaps between, you know, and you're going to get some airflow in there. But having said that, they are successful, and you can grow successful crops in there. So they do look a bit inventive and you know, interesting. You know, something I'm not quite sure how they'd last. I'd possibly say 6 to 7 years they'd actually last, but you know, if you build the construction well, it'll last you quite a long time. The second thing that you can use a bottle for, if you cut the bottom, or sorry, the top of the bottle off, and use that section, take obviously the top off, you can use it as a funnel. And I've done this a number of times. You can make funnels to put petrol into your rotavator or your lawnmower. You can also funnel stuff into bottles, other bottles or containers, anything like that. So rather than going out and buying a funnel, just cut the top off the bottle, use it as a funnel. And the second thing, obviously, you can use it as a storage bottle. You can store things in the bottle, like your garlic mixture, or your sort of your liquid fertiliser, stuff that you're making from your wormery, etc. You can store in a bottle. Obviously, you can also store water in there for watering your seedlings. Seedlings use tap water. Anything bigger than that, you know, your more established plants, you're better off using rainwater. You can also use it as a cool bottle. If you keep animals such as guinea pigs, rabbits, etc. If you sort of 2/3 fill a bottle with water, freeze it in your freezer, and then when it's really hot days, give that to your guinea pigs and your rabbits, and it'll keep them nice and cool. To keep them cool in the summer, you know, particularly if you've got them in an enclosure where it can get a little bit warm. You can use them as a cloche. You can cut the top off. Take the top off so you get a bit of airflow. You can just bob that over a plant if you like. That's the ground level, and you can make a little cloche for seedlings. You can also, using exactly the same thing, you can cut it lengthways and put it over like a row of seedlings, and you can put a row of them down. Obviously the wind will take them, so what you might need to do is put a sort of N-shaped piece of wire over just to hold them down on the ground. You can use them as a slow watering device. If you cut the top off and drill some holes in the side or in the bottom there, probably in the sides better, sink that into the ground, and then you water into the bottle rather than the ground itself. This is good for things like cucumbers, which will rot off at the bottom. If you bob that in, fill that with water, then it'll water the roots rather than the top of the plant where it's likely to rot off. Obviously I've used these in the Parsnip Propagator. That's exactly what I've used here in the pipes there. That's just the side cut off and sort of squidged up to make the pot to put the parsnips in. You can use them for bird scarers. If you take the top off, put them onto a cane, and in the wind they'll rattle. Not very effective, but I have seen it work. But you're much better off putting nets over, to be honest with you, but that's another use. You can also put them on the top of a cane to protect your eyes. So you know, if you go down and you know, rather than getting a bamboo cane in your eyes, you're going to get the top of the bottle. So you know, if you've got any children or anything like that in your garden, either put in a bottle this size or one slightly smaller. If you remember last year in the greenhouse, I put the little yoghurt sort of Aptamil type bottles on top of the canes to stop you know, anybody hurting their eyes. You can also use them as a plant pot. You can cut the top and the bottom off and use that as a plant pot. You can also turn it on its side again, cut round it and use it as a you know, sort of plant pot that way. You can take the top off, 1/3 fill it with water and drive compressed air into it, make a rocket out of it. I know that's not much to do with an allotment, but if it's full of slugs that you don't want and you're shooting them into the next field, it's got everything to do with an allotment. You can use them as a weather vane. You can cut off this end part here and use that as the cup to drive it round, or you can actually cut this in diagonal lines across that and spin it round, which will then create vanes, and you can just drive a stick through, drill a hole at each end and drive a stick through, and that will spin in the wind. So that's another way you can use it. You can also use it as a measuring container. Obviously that will contain exactly 2 litres. Obviously halfway is 1 litre, so if you're measuring up pesticides or you're measuring up fertiliser and stuff like that, you can use it as a measuring device rather than going out and buying one. You can use it obviously as a you can cut strips out of it. Obviously a white a white one, you can cut strips out and use them to label your plants, or strips again you can use if you're doing a procession of growing like lettuce or something like that. You can use them as separating devices, so sort of put a separator in a tray 1 week, next week, third week, etc. You can use them as separators that way. So you can use them as a strawberry post. So what you do is you cut the bottom off, turn them upside down, and put one inside the other, inside the other, inside the other, inside the other, and put about 8 of them together with a post running down the middle. And then by cutting holes in the side, you can plant strawberry plants, and you'll end up with a strawberry tower. I've seen that done a few times. You can also put. Actually, one of the best things you can do with a bottle, it's not particularly effective, but what I've found is you can make something like this, and if you cut the top off and the bottom off, what you can actually make is an Aphid Tannoy system. Now, I don't find these particularly effective, but it makes you feel a lot better. And basically what you do is you hold it like that, with that part towards you, and obviously you're talking to the aphids through that bit, and you just shout, "Aphids, get off the plant!" It does make you feel a lot better. It's not very effective. And the same thing can be used to slugs. "Slugs, get off the plant!" So that's another way for using bottles. So that's about, I think we could probably got about 19 different things now. One other thing you can do is you can take off the bottom here. You can attach a hose onto there. You can actually use standard plumbing fittings that'll fit onto that same thread, and you can drive water into it with a hose, stick the end of a pole like that, drill holes all the way around, and you can actually use it to water the garden. You'll get jets of water coming out from all over it. You can also turn the thing upside down, and it'll do the same thing. So if you're hanging the hose pipe off some kind of structure, the water will then shoot out. So like the tunnels, I could potentially put these along, and I could drive water through it with a hose and to water everything. So you can make it like a sort of big rose out of it. And obviously if you've got a reasonable amount of water pressure, it will blow to just sort of 2 or 3 metres. The other thing you can do is use it as a watering thing. And somewhere in here, I'll see if I can find it, I'll show you in a moment. I've got an attachment which I bought, which will go straight onto there, fill it with water, and you can use it as a watering can. If you can't find the attachments, just drill a load of small holes in the top there, screw that on, and then you can water your seedlings like that. So that's just a few very quick ideas that you can use to make basically a piece of rubbish into something that's really useful in the allotment. There are other things. Obviously you can cut the top off that, half fill it with beer and sink it in the ground, make a slug trap out of it. There's a whole raft of things you can do, but if you ever need anything for an allotment, always think about a bottle, plastic bottle like this, because there's so many things that you can make from it. It really is a shame to throw something away if you can make good use of it in the allotment. And if you're using these rather than going out and buying something, then obviously that's the best thing to do, because you save yourself money and you're also saving the environment at the same time. Okay, so this is Mother Nature Part 8, and what I want to talk to you today for this one is all about biological control. And we've talked about this in the past, or at least we've touched on it. We've talked about the pathogenic nematodes that you can use for the slugs in the ground, and I've also talked about ladybirds last year when I was talking about them, because they will also attack things like mealyworm bugs, and they'll also attack aphids and eat those as well. So a biological control is basically introducing another insect or another creature into your garden which is going to eat or infect or basically kill off the pests that you've got that are causing a problem. And that's basically biological control. Now, it's all about balance when you're talking about garden. Obviously you're dealing with Mother Nature here, so it's all about balance. What you don't want to be doing is introducing anything into your garden that's going to cause you a problem with something else. So if you've got aphids causing damage on your beans, you introduce something, for example, to kill those off, and then you cause another disease or another problem to whatever you introduce starts eating some other plant. So what you need to be doing is making sure that you're not introducing anything that's going to cause you another problem. There's a famous story in the Bible where all these people thought that the birds were eating all of the crops and stuff. So all the farmers went out with saucepans and stuff and started banging them together, and all the birds flew up in the air. And they kept doing it till the birds were exhausted, fell down and died. And basically they wiped all the birds out. Then all the insects that the birds ate all the crops, so they ended up with nothing. So that, you need to be thinking about this balance of sort of Mother Nature, and all you're doing is you're kind of swaying the balance a little bit. The thing is with biological control is really you need to be thinking about that it is a balance. It's not an instant cure for a problem. You need to be sort of working proactively with it. If you start to see a problem occurring, and obviously this is where it helps when you go up the garden or the allotment often, what you'll see is if you see a few aphids or something like that, that's when you need to start thinking about introducing something to sort them out. Don't wait till the plants are absolutely infested with aphids or sort of whatever else, because at that point really your biological control is kind of a bit too late, because it's going to take a few weeks really for the biological control to start to take effect. So if you have got a big problem with something, this possibly isn't the way to go, but it's most certainly the nicest way to go, or the the sort of most natural way to go, if you like. Now, aphids are one of the most common pests in the garden. They're one of my pet hates, as you know, and these will attack beans, brassicas. You get white fly on brassicas, you'll get black, green fly on your beans. You'll also get it on, if you grow fuchsias, like I've said in the past, I used to grow quite a lot. You'll get aphids on there. So over the years I have grown a passionate hate for these things, and there are various ways of doing it. Obviously garlic's one. I've also talked about limonene from oranges, etc., and I've also talked about other things that you can do with them. But ladybirds will eat aphids, green fly and black fly, by the million, and if you can get ladybirds in there early enough, they will sort your problem out for you. They'll go around and they'll sort of eat them all and sort of sort them all out. Ladybirds are basically have 4 stages in their life. The first stage is an egg, and obviously the adults will lay the eggs. Now they're an egg for about 2 to 18 days, and then from there they'll move to what they call the larvae, or the larva stage, and the kind of that for about sort of 2 or 3 days. After that they'll move on to the pupa stage, and in the pupa stage they'll they'll exist in that state, if you like, for 7 to 14 days. Then after that they become adult ladybirds, which is what we're all used to seeing. So if you see like little sort of black sort of grey bugs that look a bit like kind of similar to an earwig, but without having a hard abdomen, it's got all sort of segments in it. That is actually the larva of a pupa of a ladybird. So obviously don't kill them. If you don't know what they are, that'll turn into a ladybird in a few days' time. So these are what's known as a holometabolous insect, which means it's got many stages within its life. And whilst the ladybird is an adult or in its larvae stage, it will consume vast amounts of aphids. So if you put those into the garden, introduce them into the garden, they will go around and they'll eat all of the aphids, and then they'll fly off and do sort of stuff the other day. Which brings on to the next point. Some biological controls aren't, or most of them, to be honest with you, aren't particularly effective in that way as well. So if you introduce them onto your plot, there's a reasonably good chance that a good percentage of them are either going to fly off or crawl off onto other plots, and so they're not going to stay on your plot just because you put them there. Obviously, if you've got a greenhouse and you've got a problem inside the greenhouse, if you introduce them into the greenhouse, keep the windows and doors shut, or put some mesh over so they can't get out, then obviously they'll stay in the greenhouse because they're trapped. But outside, they could go all over the place. So that's another kind of drawback from biological control. As soon as you've introduced the ladybirds, as our first example, into the garden, it's going to take a few weeks for them to really knock a hole through the aphids. and then the adults will start to lay eggs. They lay about 20 eggs a day. Then obviously they'll start the process off again, so you get more and more and more and more ladybirds, and they'll sort of go through and eat all the aphids. If you are absolutely infested with aphids, it's already too late. The reproduction rate of aphids is considerably higher than ladybirds. So unless you can introduce thousands of ladybirds in one go, it's going to be sort of difficult. So this is, as I say, this is more of a proactive way of controlling things rather than a reactive way. If your beans or whatever are already covered in black fly, green fly, you're much better off spraying with garlic or you know, sort of whatever else to control them rather than introducing ladybirds. But I'm just giving you another option that you can add ladybirds, and obviously they'll go up there and, you know, sort of sort them all out. But it's going to take them a few weeks to do that. So the other point is, as well, as ladybirds are also well known for controlling mealybug or mealyworms. So if you introduce them onto anything that's been affected by them, they'll also control those. In addition to that, there are many different sort of biological controls that you'll use. I just wanted to mention three sort of more, one of which I've already mentioned, which is the pathogenic nematodes for controlling the slugs that go inside the ground or under the ground. There's also another parasitic wasp that can be used for aphids, and it's mainly whitefly that they attack, but this is called Encarsia formosa, and it sounds something like Harry Potter would say, and I think J.K. Rowling was possibly reading a garden encyclopedia when she actually come up with that. But you could just imagine Armani with a wand saying Encarsia formosa, you know, to sort of kill the whatever. But it's actually a wasp. It's a parasitic wasp, very small, that you can barely see these things. And Encarsia formosa can be bought in sort of small containers, and you just release them into the garden, and they will attack any whitefly and just completely consume them. So that's quite a good one, actually, you know, to get rid of your whitefly. Again, ladybirds will eat whitefly, but they mainly focus on black fly and green fly, but they will go for whitefly as well. Whitefly is slightly different to green fly and black fly, even though they're all aphids. The last one is red spider mite, which can be a bit of a problem for various plants. And what you need for this is a parasitic mite to kill the red mite. And this is called Phytosilus permiculus, which is possibly something else Harry Potter would say. But that's basically a red spider mite, something that will eat red spider mite. It is a mite itself, and that will obviously leave your plants alone, you know. So these are all safe things that I'm explaining to you here. Some other things, obviously, again, you need to be thinking about the balance. What you don't want to be doing is putting something in there that's going to cause you a problem. But everything that I've talked about today most certainly will not cause you a problem. But I'm just, you know, sort of always stay on the air of caution that you don't want to introduce something into the garden that may cause you another problem. So just think about what you're doing before you actually introduce it, because you could be causing yourself another problem. There is lots of literature out there on these sorts of things. Farmers use them quite widespread now, but you know, and it's always nice to have some of these insects in the garden anyway. But so that's biological control for you. So I hope this episode of Jim's Allotment has been useful and informative to you. Please do put your comments and any questions that you may have about anything I've discussed today or in previous episodes. I'm always happy to answer any questions that you've got. So thank you for watching Jim's Allotment Garden. I'll see you on the next episode.